Commander Zexithara watched the blue marble of Earth spin slowly on the holographic display, its white clouds swirling like silk scarves in an unfelt breeze. The bridge of the Valdarian dreadnought Eternal Vigil hummed with the quiet efficiency of 1,000 crew members, each one sworn to the sacred duty that had brought them across half the galaxy. "Status report," Zexithara commanded, her forearms working simultaneously across multiple control interfaces. The chitinous plates along her spine rippled with nervous energy, a telltale sign of Valdarian anxiety that she hadn't quite learned to suppress. Lieutenant Korthvan, his scaled hide gleaming under the bridge's amber lighting, consulted his tactical display. "The Devourer fleets are still 3 solar cycles out, Commander. Our early warning systems detected their approach vector approximately 1 standard week ago. They're moving in the typical formation, wave after wave of biomechanical ships, each one capable of stripping a planet bare in mere hours." Zexithara nodded grimly. She had seen the aftermath of Devourer attacks before, worlds reduced to empty husks, their atmospheres consumed, their surfaces cracked and bleeding. The Devourers were not conquerors in any traditional sense. They were a force of nature, a cosmic plague that consumed everything in their path to fuel their endless expansion across the galaxy. "And the humans?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. Still completely unaware, Communications Officer Yelandra reported, her voice carrying the melodic tones of her aquatic species. "We've been monitoring their primitive electromagnetic communications. They're still concerned with their local politics, their entertainment broadcasts, their economic disputes. There's been no indication that they've detected the approaching threat." It was exactly what Zexithara had expected, but it still sent a chill through her core. Humanity was so young, so innocent. They had barely mastered interplanetary travel within their own solar system. Their most advanced spacecraft were fragile things of metal and ceramic, dependent on chemical propulsion and primitive fusion reactors. They had no energy shields, no quantum weapons, no understanding of the true horrors that lurked in the space between stars. The Galactic Council had debated for hours about Earth's fate. Some members argued that intervention would violate the prime non-interference doctrine, the sacred law that prevented advanced civilizations from meddling in the development of primitive species. Others pointed out that the Devourers were an existential threat to all life, and that every sapient species deserved protection, regardless of their technological level. In the end, it was the humans themselves who had swayed the decision. 3 months ago, the Council had intercepted a transmission from Earth, a simple radio broadcast from one of their news organizations. It was a story about a human child who had fallen into a well, and how an entire community had worked tirelessly for days to rescue her. The broadcast had described the tears of joy when she was finally pulled to safety, the way strangers had comforted her family, the outpouring of support from across their planet. It was such a small thing, really. In the vast scope of galactic politics and cosmic threats, the rescue of a single child should have been insignificant. But something about that story had resonated with the Council members. Here was a species that valued individual life so highly that they would mobilize hundreds of people to save just one. Here was a civilization that celebrated compassion as much as achievement. "They deserve a chance," the Althurian delegate had said, his crystalline form shimmering with emotion. "Any species capable of such unity in the face of individual suffering deserves to survive what's coming." And so the Valdarian fleet had been dispatched. 50 of their finest ships carrying the most advanced technology their civilization had ever developed. Energy shields that could deflect stellar radiation, quantum torpedoes that could crack moons, fighters that moved faster than light itself. It was a force capable of holding off the Devourers long enough for humanity to evacuate, or at least to give them a fighting chance. "Commander," Korthvan said, interrupting her thoughts, "we're receiving a transmission from the human space station. They appear to have detected our approach." Zexithara felt her breathing apparatus flutter. This was the moment she had been dreading. How do you explain to a primitive species that their entire world was about to be consumed by an unstoppable force? How do you tell them that their only hope lay in the goodwill of aliens they had never known existed? "Put it through," she commanded. The main display flickered, and suddenly she was looking at a human face. The creature was startlingly similar to the Veltans. Bipedal, with forward-facing eyes and a mouth that appeared designed for both communication and consumption. But there were differences, too. The skin was a pale pink color, and strange fibrous growths covered the top of the head. Most unsettling of all were the eyes. They seemed to hold an intelligence that was both familiar and utterly alien. "Unknown vessel," the human said, and Zexthara was surprised to hear that their universal translator was able to parse the meaning with relative ease. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the International Space Station. You have entered Earth's solar system without authorization. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." Zexthara straightened in her command chair, drawing upon centuries of diplomatic training. "Greetings, Commander Chen. I am Commander Zexthara of the Valdarian Defense Fleet. We come bearing urgent news about a threat to your world. Your species is in grave danger and we are here to help." The human's expression changed subtly, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a tightening around the mouth. "What kind of threat?" "In approximately 72 of your hours, a force known as the Devourers will arrive in your system. They are a plague unlike anything your species has encountered. They consume entire worlds, leaving nothing behind but empty space. We have come to protect you." Commander Chen was quiet for a long moment, and Zexthara could see her eyes moving as she consulted displays outside the transmission range. When she looked back, her expression was unreadable. "And what exactly do you expect us to do about this threat?" The question caught Zexthara off guard. She had expected fear, perhaps panic, maybe even gratitude, but the human's tone suggested something else entirely, a kind of calm assessment that seemed almost casual. "We will handle the defense," Zexthara explained. "Our fleet is more than capable of holding off the Devourers long enough for you to evacuate your population to a safer system." "We have prepared transport vessels." "That won't be necessary," Commander Chen interrupted. "We'll handle it ourselves." The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Around the bridge, Zexthara's crew exchanged glances of confusion and disbelief. Handle it themselves? These primitives who still used chemical rockets and couldn't even properly shield their planet from solar radiation? "Commander Chen," Zexthara said carefully, "I don't think you understand the magnitude of this threat. The Devourers have consumed thousands of worlds. They have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than your own. This is not something that can be handled with primitive weapons." The human smiled then, and it was perhaps the most unsettling expression Zexthara had ever seen. It wasn't the smile of someone who was afraid or grateful or even defiant. It was the smile of someone who knew something that others didn't. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Commander Chen said quietly, and then the transmission ended. The silence on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil stretched for nearly a full minute after the transmission ended. Zexthara stared at the empty display where Commander Chen's face had been moments before, trying to process what had just happened. In her 3 centuries of military service, she had delivered warnings of impending doom to dozens of species. The reactions were always predictable: fear, panic, desperate pleas for assistance, or occasionally, resigned acceptance of fate. Never before had she been dismissed with such casual confidence. Did that human just refuse our protection? Lieutenant Korthvin asked, his voice carrying a note of bewilderment that echoed through the bridge. "It would appear so," Zexthara replied, her tone carefully neutral, even as her mind raced. She turned to her communications officer. "Yelandra, scan their electromagnetic spectrum. I want to know what kind of military preparations they're making." The aquatic officer's tentacles danced across her console with practiced efficiency. "Commander, their communications are strange. I'm detecting massive amounts of data transfer between their military installations, but it's all heavily encrypted. More concerning is the activity around their space installations." "What kind of activity?" "They're launching ships, Commander. Hundreds of them. Small craft mostly, but they're moving with a coordination that suggests advanced battle management systems. They've also begun broadcasting on frequencies that our databases don't recognize, some kind of quantum-entangled communication network that shouldn't be possible with their technology. Level." Zexthara felt the chitinous plates along her spine begin to vibrate, a response she hadn't experienced since her first combat mission. Something was very wrong here. "Tactical. What are our sensors telling us about their defensive capabilities?" Korthvin's scaled hands moved across his displays, pulling up scan results that had been collected over the past several days. "Surface installations show typical primitive energy signatures: nuclear reactors, chemical processing plants, electromagnetic communication arrays. But Commander, there are anomalies." "What kind of anomalies?" deep underground installations that our sensors can't penetrate, energy readings that don't match any known technology in our databases. And then there are the construction sites. Construction sites, massive ones, scattered across their planet's surface and throughout their asteroid belt. They appear to be building something, but our scanners can't determine what. The materials they're using include elements that shouldn't exist in stable form, artificial isotopes that would require technology centuries beyond their apparent development level. A chill ran through Zexithara's core. She had served in the Galactic Defense Corps long enough to recognize the signs of a species that was not what it appeared to be. But humanity had been observed for decades. Their technological progression had been documented and verified. They were supposed to be a young species, barely out of their planetary cradle. Communications, get me a direct line to the Galactic Council. Emergency priority. The transmission took several minutes to establish across the vast distances involved, but finally the holographic forms of the council members materialized around the bridge. The Althurian delegate Kethmore was the first to speak. Commander Zexithara, what is your status? Are the humans prepared for evacuation? Honored Counselor, we have a situation. The humans have refused our assistance. They claim they will handle the Devourer threat themselves. The reaction was immediate. The crystalline Althurian flickered with disbelief, while the gas-form Etherian delegate seemed to lose cohesion for a moment. It was the mechanical voice of the synthetic collective representative that cut through the chaos. Clarification requested. Analysis indicates 99.7% probability that human species lacks sufficient technology to resist Devourer incursion. Possible explanations: misunderstanding of threat level, psychological denial response, or unknown factors. Unknown factors, Zexithara repeated. That's what concerns me. Counselors, our intelligence regarding humanity may be incomplete. They're displaying capabilities that don't match our assessments. Impossible, the Vegan delegate interjected, her plant-like form rustling with agitation. We have observed their development for over 50 years. They are barely capable of interplanetary travel. They still use primitive combustion engines and metal projectile weapons. Then explain this, Zexithara said, transmitting the tactical data her crew had collected. Quantum communication networks, artificial isotopes, underground installations that our most advanced sensors can't penetrate. Either our intelligence is wrong, or humanity is hiding something. The council members fell silent as they reviewed the data. It was Kethmore who finally spoke, his crystalline form dimming with concern. Commander, maintain your position and continue observation. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. We need to understand what we're dealing with before the Devourers arrive. The transmission ended, leaving Zexithara alone with her thoughts and a crew that was beginning to show signs of serious concern. She had fought the Devourers before 3 times in her career. Each time it had taken the combined fleets of multiple species to hold them off long enough for civilian evacuation. The idea that a single primitive world could stand against them was not just unlikely, it was absurd. Commander, Yolandra called out, her voice tight with worry. You need to see this. The main display shifted to show Earth's moon, which had seemed unremarkable during their initial approach. But now, as their sensors focused on specific coordinates, Zexithara could see structures emerging from what had appeared to be natural craters. Massive installations, previously hidden, were rising from the lunar surface like flowers blooming in fast motion. Are those weapons platforms? Korthevin asked. Unknown, Yolandra replied. But they're big. Each one is approximately the size of our escort frigates. And Commander, they're not the only ones. The display expanded to show the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets from Earth's sun. What had appeared to be natural space debris was revealing itself to be something else entirely. Hundreds of objects were moving with purpose, converging on specific coordinates in precise formations that spoke of advanced command and control systems. How long have those been there? Zexithara demanded. Unknown, Commander. Our initial scans identified them as natural asteroids, but now that they're active, it's clear they've been constructed to mimic natural bodies. The level of camouflage technology required for this deception is significant. Zexithara felt a growing sense of unease. Species that hid their true capabilities usually had good reasons for doing so. In her experience, those reasons were rarely benevolent. But the humans had seemed so innocent, so naive. Their broadcast spoke of art and music, of love and loss, of dreams and hopes that resonated across species barriers. "Commander," the tactical officer called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups from those lunar installations. They're powering up. Weapons? Unknown. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases, but the power levels are impressive." Before Zexithera could respond, her communications console chimed with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared on the screen was not Commander Chen, but an older human male with gray fibrous growths covering his head and deep lines around his eyes. "This is Admiral James Harrison of Earth Defense Command," the human said. "Commander Zexithera, I believe we need to talk." The formal tone was a stark contrast to Commander Chen's casual dismissal. This human carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to command, someone who had seen combat and understood its realities. "Admiral Harrison," Zexithera replied carefully, "we are here to offer assistance against the approaching Devourer fleet." "And we appreciate the gesture," Harrison said. "But as Commander Chen informed you, we'll be handling this ourselves. However, we wanted to extend an invitation. Your fleet is welcome to take a position at a safe distance and observe. We think you might find the proceedings educational." Educational. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Zexithara found herself staring into those strange human eyes, trying to read the intelligence behind them. There was something there, a confidence that went beyond mere bravado, a certainty that suggested knowledge rather than hope. "Admiral, with respect, you may not fully understand what you're facing. The Devourers have consumed 1,734 worlds," Harrison interrupted. "Destroyed 43 different sapient species. Reduced 7 entire stellar civilizations to cosmic dust. Yes, Commander, we know exactly what we're facing." The casual recitation of statistics that were classified at the highest levels of galactic security sent a shock through Zexithara's system. How could the humans possibly know such specific information? "We'll take position at the coordinates we're transmitting to you," Harrison continued. "Consider it a front-row seat to the show. We promise you won't be disappointed." And once again the transmission ended, leaving Zexithara staring at an empty screen and wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her career by not demanding answers when she had the chance. 48 hours before the Devourers were scheduled to arrive, Zexithara made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her career. She ordered the Eternal Vigil to move to the coordinates Admiral Harrison had provided, positioning her fleet in what humans would call the cheap seats of their own solar system's defense. The location was approximately 1 astronomical unit from Earth's orbital path, close enough to observe whatever was about to unfold, but far enough away to avoid being caught in any crossfire. As her fleet settled into position, Zexithara couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to witness something that would fundamentally change her understanding of the galaxy. "Status report on human activities," she commanded, settling into her command chair with the nervous energy of someone about to watch their first gladiatorial combat. Lieutenant Korthvin consulted his tactical displays, his scaled brow furrowed in concentration. "Commander, their level of organization is unprecedented for a primitive species. I'm tracking over 15,000 individual spacecraft moving throughout their system, each one maintaining perfect formation discipline. Their communication networks are processing data at rates that should be impossible with their technology. What about their defensive installations? The lunar platforms are fully operational now, Commander. Whatever they are, they're drawing power directly from the planet's magnetic field through some kind of quantum tap. I've never seen energy collection on this scale. Each platform is generating enough power to supply a small city." Yolandra's melodic voice added to the report. "Their asteroid belt installations have revealed themselves to be far more extensive than we initially believed. What appeared to be a few hundred hidden structures are actually thousands. They've been building in secret for decades, possibly longer. Decades." The word struck Zexithara like a physical blow. How long had humanity been preparing for this moment? How long had they known about the Devourers while maintaining the facade of a primitive, isolated species? "Commander," came an urgent call from the sensor station. "I'm detecting the Devourer advanced scouts. They've dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system." The main display shifted to show the familiar and terrifying sight of Devourer scouts, organic ships that looked more like massive insects than spacecraft. Each one was the size of a small asteroid. covered in writhing tentacles and pulsing with the bioluminescent patterns that served as their communication system. But these were just the heralds. Behind them, still traveling faster than light, came the real threat. "How many scouts?" Zexathara asked, though she already knew the answer would be disturbing. 47 confirmed, with more arriving every few minutes. Standard Devourer procedure. They'll spend approximately 6 hours analyzing the system's defenses before the main fleet arrives. Zexathara had seen this before. The scouts would map every energy signature, catalog every potential threat, and transmit their findings back to the main fleet. The Devourers were many things, but they were not foolish. They had survived for millions of years by being methodical in their approach to each new world. What are the humans doing in response? That's what's strange, Commander. They're doing absolutely nothing. The answer sent a chill through the bridge. Every species in galactic history had responded to Devourer scouts with some kind of defensive action. Mobilizing fleets, charging weapons, preparing evacuation ships. The complete lack of reaction suggested either paralyzing fear or incredible confidence. Are you certain? No weapons charging, no ships moving to intercept? None, Commander. Their fleets are maintaining position, their platforms are powered up but not targeting the scouts, and their communication traffic has actually decreased. It's as if they're waiting for the next 6 hours. Zexathara watched in growing bewilderment as the Devourer scouts conducted their reconnaissance while humanity did absolutely nothing to interfere. The scouts mapped the system methodically, their organic sensors probing every planet, every moon, every artificial installation they could detect. They paid particular attention to Earth's moon and the asteroid belt, clearly recognizing that the installations there represented some kind of defensive capability. But humanity's response remained unchanged. Perfect. Eerie calm, Commander, Ylandra announced suddenly. The scouts are transmitting their findings to the main fleet. Based on the data packet size and transmission duration, they've compiled a comprehensive tactical assessment. And the main fleet is responding, Commander. They're dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The Devourers are here. The display flickered and then showed something that never failed to inspire terror in every sapient species that witnessed it. The Devourer main fleet emerging from the quantum foam of space like a nightmare made manifest. Thousands upon thousands of organic ships, each one unique, each one the size of a small moon. They moved with the coordinated precision of a school of fish. But there was something predatory in their formation that spoke of intelligence both ancient and alien. At the center of the fleet was the hierarchical node, a creature so vast that it defied easy description. Part ship, part living organism, it was easily the size of a small planet. Its surface writhed with billions of smaller organisms, and the space around it distorted as its immense gravity well affected local space-time. Estimated fleet strength? Zexathara asked, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. Preliminary scans indicate approximately 12,000 individual ships, Commander. This is one of the largest Devourer fleets ever recorded. It would take the combined forces of half the galaxy to have any hope of stopping them. And still, humanity did nothing. The Devourer fleet took nearly an hour to fully emerge from faster-than-light travel, spreading out across the outer edges of the solar system like a plague of cosmic locusts. Their formations were perfect, their coordination absolute. Each ship moved to its assigned position with the precision of a species that had perfected the art of planetary consumption over millions of years. They're beginning their approach, Korthovan reported. Standard formation. Outer wings will secure the system's edges while the main body moves toward the inner planets. At their current rate of approach, they'll reach Earth's orbital zone in approximately 14 hours. 14 hours. Zexathara had seen civilizations with advanced technology and centuries of preparation fall to the Devourers in less time than that. How could one primitive world hope to survive what was coming? But then something changed. Commander, Ylandra called out, her voice sharp with surprise. I'm detecting something, a transmission from Earth, but not electromagnetic. It's using quantum entanglement across multiple dimensional phases. I've never seen anything like it. What kind of transmission? It appears to be coordinates. Massive strings of spatial coordinates being broadcast simultaneously to thousands of locations throughout the galaxy. Before Zexathara could ask what that meant, her communications console lit up with incoming transmissions. Dozens of them, all arriving simultaneously from different points in space. The faces that appeared on her secondary displays were familiar, representatives of nearly every major civilization in the galaxy. Commander Zexthara, came the crystalline voice of Council Member Kethmore. Maintain your position and observe. Under no circumstances are you to interfere with what's about to happen. Counselor, I don't understand. The humans have activated the convergence protocol, Kethmore continued, his form flickering with what appeared to be excitement. Every fleet in the galaxy has been mobilizing to these coordinates for the past 72 hours. What you're about to witness is not a last stand. It's a trap. The words hit Zexthara like a plasma bolt to the chest. The convergence protocol was theoretical, a legendary defense pact that supposedly existed between the galaxy's oldest civilizations. According to the stories, it could only be activated when a threat became existential to all life in the galaxy. The humans activated it? She stammered. But they're a primitive species. No, Commander, came another voice. Admiral Harrison, his image appearing on her main display. We're not. Behind him, Zexthara could see what appeared to be a command center that rivaled anything the galactic civilizations could produce. Advanced holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the system, both Devourer and Allied. Humans moved between the displays with the practiced efficiency of a species that had been fighting wars among the stars for far longer than anyone had suspected. We've been waiting for this moment for over 2 centuries, Harrison continued. Ever since we first learned about the Devourers and the threat they represented. Everything we've done, every technology we've developed, every alliance we've forged has been leading to this moment. But your broadcasts, Zexthara protested, your technology levels, your primitive spacecraft, carefully maintained fiction, Harrison said with a slight smile. Would you trust a species that revealed its true capabilities too early? Would the galaxy have accepted our leadership if they knew what we were really capable of? The questions hung in the air as Zexthara struggled to process the implications. Humanity hadn't been protected by the galaxy had been protected by humanity. And now, as the Devourer fleet moved, with the coordinated precision of a school of fish, but there was something predatory in their formation that spoke of intelligence, both ancient and alien. At the center of the fleet was the hierarchical node, a creature so vast that it defied easy description. Part ship, part living organism, it was easily the size of a small planet. Its surface writhed with billions of smaller organisms, and the space around it distorted as its immense gravity well affected local space-time. Estimated fleet strength? Zexthara asked, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. Preliminary scans indicate approximately 12,000 individual ships, Commander. This is one of the largest Devourer fleets ever recorded. It would take the combined forces of half the galaxy to have any hope of stopping them. And still, humanity did nothing. The Devourer fleet took nearly an hour to fully emerge from faster-than-light travel, spreading out across the outer edges of the solar system like a plague of cosmic locusts. Their formations were perfect, their coordination absolute. Each ship moved to its assigned position, with the precision of a species that had perfected the art of planetary consumption over millions of years. They're beginning their approach, Korthvin reported. Standard formation. Outer wings will secure the system's edges while the main body moves toward the inner planets. At their current rate of approach, they'll reach Earth's orbital zone in approximately 14 hours. 14 hours. Zexthara had seen civilizations with advanced technology, and centuries of preparation fall to the Devourers in less time than that. How could one primitive world hope to survive what was coming? But then something changed. Commander, Elandra called out, her voice sharp with surprise. I'm detecting something. A transmission from Earth, but not electromagnetic. It's using quantum entanglement across multiple dimensional phases. I've never seen anything like it. What kind of transmission? It appears to be coordinates. Massive strings of spatial coordinates being broadcast simultaneously to thousands of locations throughout the galaxy. Before Zexthara could ask what that meant, her communications console lit up with incoming transmissions, dozens of them, all arriving simultaneously from different points in space. The faces that appeared on her secondary displays were familiar, representatives of nearly every major civilization in the galaxy. Commander Zexthara, came the crystalline voice of Council Member Kethmore. Maintain your position and observe. Under no circumstances are you to interfere with what's about to happen. Counselor, I don't understand. The humans have activated the convergence protocol, Kethmore continued, his form flickering with what appeared to be excitement. Every fleet in the galaxy has been mobilizing to these coordinates for the past 72 hours. What you're about to witness is not a last stand, it's a trap. The words hit Zexathera like a plasma bolt to the chest. The convergence protocol was theoretical, a legendary defense pact that supposedly existed between the galaxy's oldest civilizations. According to the stories, it could only be activated when a threat became existential to all life in the galaxy. The humans activated it? She stammered. But they're a primitive species. No, Commander, came another voice. Admiral Harrison, his image appearing on her main display. We're not. Behind him, Zexathera could see what appeared to be a command center that rivaled anything that galactic civilizations could produce. Advanced holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the system, both Devourer and Allied. Humans moved between the displays with the practiced efficiency of a species that had been fighting wars among the stars for far longer than anyone had suspected. We've been waiting for this moment for over 2 centuries, Harrison continued. Ever since we first learned about the Devourers and the threat they represented. Everything we've done, every technology we've developed, every alliance we've forged has been leading to this moment. But your broadcasts, Zexathara protested. Your technology levels, your primitive spacecraft, carefully maintained fiction, Harrison said with a slight smile. Would you trust a species that revealed its true capabilities too early? Would the galaxy have accepted our leadership if they knew what we were really capable of? The questions hung in the air as Zexathara struggled to process the implications. Humanity hadn't been protected by the galaxy. The galaxy had been protected by humanity. And now, as the Devourer fleet moved toward Earth with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey, they were about to discover just how wrong they were about who was hunting whom. The moment Admiral Harrison finished speaking, space around the solar system began to change in ways that defied everything Zexathara thought she knew about physics. Points of light appeared at seemingly random locations throughout the system, tiny pinpricks that rapidly expanded into tears in the fabric of space-time itself. What is that? She demanded, her crew scrambling to analyze readings that made no sense according to their understanding of the universe. Quantum gates. Harrison's voice came through the communication link, calm and matter-of-fact. We've been building them for the better part of a century. Each one is anchored to a different allied civilization, creating an instantaneous transportation network across the galaxy. The tiers in space widened, and through them came something that took Zexathara's breath away. Ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships representing every major civilization in the galaxy, and many she didn't recognize. Sleek Althurian crystal ships that sparkled like jewels in the starlight, massive draconian battle cruisers with armor that seemed to drink in light itself, the geometric perfection of synthetic collective vessels, their surfaces covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. But more shocking than the variety was the sheer number. As each gate disgorged its cargo of allied vessels, the space around Earth's solar system filled with the largest military force in recorded galactic history. How? Zexathara whispered, watching as her tactical displays struggled to count the arriving fleets. How did you coordinate this? How did you even know about all these civilizations? We've been out here longer than you think, Harrison replied. Humanity didn't discover space travel 200 years ago. We rediscovered it. We've been among the stars for over a millennium, watching, learning, building relationships. When we realized the Devourer threat was growing beyond what any single civilization could handle, we began preparing for this moment. Lieutenant Korthvin's voice cracked as he reported the fleet strength. Commander, I count over 50,000 allied vessels, and the number is still growing. Fleet composition includes Valdarian dreadnoughts, Etherian phase ships, vegan biocruisers, and, Commander, there are ship designs here that don't match anything in our databases. Those would be ours, Harrison said, and Zexathara could hear the pride in his voice. Humanity's actual fleet. We've been using other species' technology as a baseline, but we've made certain improvements. As if summoned by his words, new shapes began emerging from the quantum gates, ships that bore a resemblance to the primitive vessels humanity had been displaying to the galaxy, but only in the way that a sword resembles a butter knife. These craft were sleek and predatory, their hulls seeming to absorb energy rather than reflect it. They moved with an elegance that spoke of advanced gravitational manipulation, and as they took their positions in the growing armada, space around them seemed to ripple and bend. Cloaking technology, Yolanda breathed. That's how they've hidden their true capabilities. Those ships exist in a state of quantum superposition. They're simultaneously there and not there until they choose to fully manifest. The Devourer fleet, which had been advancing with the confidence of apex predators, began to slow their approach. Even from her distant observation point, Zexithara could see the biological ships starting to cluster together in defensive formations. The Devourers had encountered unified resistance before, but nothing on this scale. They're reconsidering their approach, Korthvin reported. Bioship formations are shifting to siege configuration. They're preparing for a prolonged engagement. Let them prepare, Harrison said, and now his voice carried a harder edge. Computer, initiate Operation Mousetrap. The response was immediate and terrifying. Every human ship in the system simultaneously vanished from normal space, their quantum signatures disappearing so completely that for a moment Zexithara wondered if they had simply ceased to exist. The Allied fleets remained visible, maintaining their positions in a massive sphere around the approaching Devourers. Where did they go? She demanded. Hyperspace, Harrison replied. We've learned to use dimensions that most species don't even know exist. While you're watching the show from here, we're moving to positions that will give us certain tactical advantages. The Devourer fleet, apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor, when facing odds of 4-1, began to spread out in their standard consumption formation. Instead of a direct assault, they would surround the system and begin the slow process of strip mining it from the outside in. It was a tactic that had served them well for millions of years, patient, methodical, inevitable. But as they moved into position, something extraordinary happened. Space itself began to sing. It started as a low harmonic that Zexithara felt in her bones rather than heard with her ears. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, resonating through the quantum foam that underlied normal space-time. As the harmony built in complexity, she realized what she was hearing. The combined songs of every Etherean in the Allied fleet, their gaseous forms creating music from the raw fabric of reality. What are they doing? She asked, mesmerized by the beauty of the sound. Mapping, Harrison replied. The Ethereans can sense quantum fluctuations across vast distances. They're creating a real-time tactical map of the entire engagement zone, tracking every Devourer ship even when they try to phase out of normal space. The song reached a crescendo, and suddenly every display on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil lit up with targeting data. The positions of every Devourer ship were highlighted in perfect detail, their movement vectors predicted with mathematical precision, their weak points identified and catalogued. Now, Harrison said simply, humanity's fleet materialized from hyperspace not around the Devourers, but inside their formation. Each human ship appeared directly adjacent to a Devourer vessel, close enough that their hulls were almost touching. It was impossible. The level of precision required to execute such a maneuver without catastrophic collisions should have been beyond any civilization's capabilities. But there they were, thousands of human ships appearing simultaneously in the heart of the enemy formation, like a magician's greatest trick, made manifest on a cosmic scale. The Devourers, caught completely off guard, began to react with the speed of organisms that had survived for eons by adapting quickly to changing circumstances. Bioweapons erupted from their hulls, acidic projectiles that could eat through any known material. Viral agents designed to corrupt technology and turn it against its creators spread through space like luminous clouds of death. And then the humans began to fight back. The weapons they revealed defied classification. Beams of energy that seemed to unravel matter at the quantum level, reducing massive bioships to their component atoms in seconds. Projectiles that phased through normal space and struck their targets from dimensions that existed perpendicular to reality. Most disturbing of all were the weapons that seemed to attack the Devourer's biological processes directly, causing the massive organisms to convulse and writhe as their own cellular structures turned against them. How is this possible? Zexithara whispered, watching as Devourer ships that had seemed invincible minutes before began to break apart under the human assault. We've had their genetic code for over 2 centuries, Harrison replied, his voice clinical now. Every time they consumed a world, They left traces of their biological material behind. We've been studying them, learning their weaknesses, developing specific countermeasures. Every weapon you're seeing was designed specifically to kill devourers. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As the battle raged and devourer ships began to fall by the hundreds, something incredible happened to the human vessels. They began to absorb the destroyed biomatter, their hulls literally consuming the remains of their enemies and growing larger and more powerful with each kill. "They're feeding," Korthvin said in amazement. "The human ships are feeding on the devourers." "Biomechanical integration," Harrison confirmed. "We learned the technique from studying devourer technology. The difference is that we use it defensively. We only feed on things that threaten the galaxy's survival." The irony was not lost on Zexathara. Humanity had turned the devourer's greatest strength against them, creating ships that could consume their enemies just as efficiently as the cosmic plague had consumed countless worlds. But where the devourers consumed indiscriminately, humanity consumed with purpose. The battle that had begun as a potential extinction event for Earth was rapidly becoming a massacre of biblical proportions. The devourer fleet, despite their vast numbers and millions of years of experience, found themselves outmatched not just by superior firepower, but by an enemy that understood them better than they understood themselves. And at the center of it all, growing larger and more menacing with each passing moment, was the hierarchical node, the ancient intelligence that had guided the devourers for longer than most civilizations had existed. As Zexthara watched human ships began to converge on the massive entity, their movements coordinated with a precision that suggested they had been planning this specific engagement for decades. "Admiral," she found herself saying, "that thing at the center of their fleet, it's not just a ship. It's their hive mind, their controlling intelligence." "If it escapes, it won't," Harrison replied, and there was so. The hierarchical node was dying, and it knew it. For millions of years, the ancient intelligence had guided the devourers across the galaxy, consuming world after world in an endless quest for survival and growth. It had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, had absorbed the knowledge and memories of billions of sentient beings, had grown so vast and complex that it barely remembered what it had been before becoming the supreme consciousness of its species. But now, as human ships swarmed around its massive form like antibodies attacking an infection, the node experienced something it had not felt in eons: genuine fear. "Status report," Admiral Harrison commanded from the bridge of humanity's flagship, the Prometheus. The vessel was a testament to human engineering, sleek and predatory. Its hull incorporated technology borrowed from a dozen different civilizations and improved beyond recognition. "Devourer fleet strength, down to 30% and falling," came the crisp report from his tactical officer. "Their outer formations have completely collapsed. Remaining ships are clustering around the hierarchical node in defensive configurations. Casualties on our side? Minimal. 17 ships damaged, 3 destroyed. The Allied fleets report similar losses. Our knowledge of devourer tactics and biology has given us an overwhelming advantage." Harrison nodded grimly. The price of this victory had been paid long before the first shot was fired. In centuries of careful preparation, in the sacrifice of revealing humanity's true nature to the galaxy, in the risks taken to forge alliances with species that might have seen them as a threat if they had known the truth. "Sir," another voice called out, "the node is attempting to establish communication. Put it through." The main display flickered, and suddenly Harrison found himself looking at something that defied easy description. The node's consciousness manifested as a constantly shifting amalgamation of faces, some human, some alien, all absorbed over the millennia of devourer expansion. When it spoke, its voice was a harmony of billions of absorbed minds. "You surprise us," the node said, its composite voice carrying undertones of species that had been extinct for thousands of years. "We have consumed 1,700 worlds, absorbed 43 distinct civilizations. Never have we encountered resistance of this magnitude." "What are you?" "We're humanity," Harrison replied simply, "and we've been preparing for this conversation for a very long time." "Impossible. Our scouts observed your species for decades. You are primitive, isolated, barely capable of interplanetary travel. The disparity between observation and reality suggests elaborate deception. The greatest deception was letting you think we were prey," Harrison said. When we first detected your expansion pattern 2 centuries ago, we realized that direct confrontation would be futile. So we did what humans do best: we adapted, we learned, we prepared. On the tactical display, the remaining Devourer ships continued to fall under the coordinated assault of the Allied fleets, but Harrison's attention was focused on the node itself. This was the moment everything had been leading to, the chance to end the Devourer threat permanently. You studied us, the node observed, its amalgamated features shifting as it processed the implications. You learned our biology, our tactics, our weaknesses. But how? We are ancient beyond your comprehension. We have survived the death of stars. You're not the only ancient intelligence in the galaxy, Harrison replied. When we first ventured beyond our solar system, we didn't just encounter other civilizations. We found the ruins of civilizations you had consumed. Entire worlds reduced to ash and bone, but sometimes the archives survived. Sometimes there were survivors hiding in deep space, carrying fragments of their people's knowledge. The node's expression shifted, cycling through faces that spoke of growing understanding and horror. You allied with our victims. We became their voice, Harrison corrected. Every world you consumed left traces. Genetic material, technological remnants, cultural records. We gathered them all, studied them, learned from them. Your greatest weakness isn't biological or technological, it's psychological. You see other species as resources to be consumed, but you never considered that they might be teachers. Around the node, the last of the Devourer escort ships fell to human weapons, but the ancient intelligence itself remained untouchable behind energy shields that had protected it for millennia. Traditional weapons would be useless against its massive bulk. It was too large, too well defended, too adaptable. But humanity hadn't come this far to rely on traditional weapons. Deploy the Erebus array, Harrison commanded. Across the engagement zone, human ships began to change configuration. What had appeared to be individual vessels revealed themselves to be components of something far larger and more sophisticated. They linked together with mechanical precision, forming a structure that dwarfed even the hierarchical node. What is that? The node demanded, its composite voice carrying the first notes of genuine panic. Our final lesson from your victims, Harrison replied. The Andromedans, remember them? You consumed their entire galaxy 15 million years ago, but they left behind theoretical work on consciousness transfer, on the possibility of moving an entire civilization's memories and experiences into a single quantum matrix. The Erebus array powered up, its surface rippling with energy patterns that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. As it charged, space around it began to distort, reality bending in ways that hurt to look at directly. You're going to transfer our consciousness? The node asked, its voice now carrying genuine fear. Into what? Into justice, Harrison said simply. Into a construct where every being you've consumed over the millennia will have their voice heard, where they can judge you for what you've done to them in their worlds. The node's shields flared as it attempted to flee, but it was too late. Human ships had surrounded it completely, their gravitational manipulation systems creating a spatial lock that prevented faster-than-light travel. The ancient intelligence was trapped, caught in humanity's carefully laid snare after eons of freedom. You cannot do this, the node protested, its amalgamated features cycling rapidly through expressions of rage and terror. We are the culmination of millions of years of evolution, the synthesis of countless civilizations. We are perfection itself. You're a parasite, Harrison replied coldly, a cosmic cancer that has spread through the galaxy for far too long. But parasites can be cured. The Erebus array reached full power, and suddenly the space around the node filled with the voices of the dead. 43 civilizations spoke as one, their combined consciousness given form by technology that married human engineering with the theoretical work of species that had died before Earth's sun was born. The node tried to resist, its own vast consciousness pushing back against the quantum matrix that sought to contain it. For a moment, the outcome was uncertain. Ancient intelligence against the combined will of its victims, predator against prey in a battle fought on levels of reality that existed beyond normal space-time. But the node had a fatal weakness that it had never recognized. For all its power, for all its accumulated knowledge, it had never truly understood the species it consumed. It saw them as resources, as fuel for its own growth. But it had never grasped the essential truth that Harrison and humanity had built their entire strategy around. The dead remember, and they hunger for justice. The node's consciousness began to fragment as the voices of its victims overwhelmed its defenses. Billions of absorbed minds, freed from their ancient prison, turned against their captor with the fury of the eternally wronged. The ancient intelligence that had guided the Devourers for millennia found itself facing not just humanity's weapons, but the accumulated judgment of every species it had ever consumed. "This is impossible," the node whispered as its composite features began to dissolve. "We absorbed them completely. They were integrated into our consciousness. They should not be able to resist." "You absorbed their knowledge and memories," Harrison said, watching as the hierarchical node began to collapse in on itself. "But you never absorbed their souls. And souls, as it turns out, are the one thing that can't be consumed." The node's death throes sent shockwaves through space that were felt across the entire solar system. As the ancient intelligence finally collapsed, the remaining Devourer ships throughout the galaxy suddenly went dormant, their controlling consciousness severed forever. Across the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, Zexathara and her crew watched in stunned silence as the threat that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years was finally ended. But more than that, they watched as humanity revealed itself to be not the primitive species they had appeared to be, but the galaxy's secret guardians, the civilization that had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone had imagined. "It's over," Admiral Harrison announced, his voice carrying across all Allied communication channels. "The Devourer threat has been permanently eliminated. The galaxy is free." But even as celebrations began among the Allied fleets, Zexathara found herself wondering about the implications of what she had witnessed. If humanity had been hiding their true capabilities for so long, what else were they capable of? What other threats had they been preparing for in secret? And most importantly, what did this mean for the future of galactic civilization now that human? In the aftermath of the hierarchical node's destruction, space around Earth's solar system had taken on an almost festival-like atmosphere. Ships from dozens of civilizations mingled freely, their crews exchanging stories and celebrating the end of a threat that had haunted the galaxy for millions of years. But aboard the Eternal Vigil, Commander Zexathara found herself struggling with emotions she couldn't quite name. "Status report from the Allied fleets," she requested, trying to maintain some semblance of military protocol, even as her worldview crumbled around her. "All vessels report successful mission completion," Lieutenant Korthovan replied, his voice carrying a note of bewilderment that echoed her own feelings. "Casualty reports are coming in from across the fleet. Final tallies show less than 1% losses among Allied forces. The Devourer threat has been completely eliminated. Not just defeated, but eradicated entirely. Less than 1%. Zexathara had seen projections for Devourer engagements that predicted casualty rates of 60% or higher, even with overwhelming numerical superiority. The idea that such a catastrophic threat could be neutralized with minimal losses seemed impossible. Yet the evidence was floating all around them. "Commander," Yelandra called out from her communication station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. All fleet commanders are requested to report to Earth for immediate debriefing." Earth, the primitive world that had somehow orchestrated the largest military operation in galactic history. Zexathara found herself laughing, a bitter sound that carried no humor. "Set course for Earth. I suppose it's time we learned who we've really been dealing with all these years." The journey to Earth's orbital space gave Zexathara time to process what she had witnessed. As her ship approached the blue world that had seemed so innocent just days before, she could see the true scope of humanity's deception. Orbital stations that had appeared to be simple research facilities revealed themselves to be massive military complexes. The moon's surface bristled with weapon systems that could have held off entire invasion fleets. And throughout the asteroid belt, construction facilities continued their work on projects that defied easy classification. "How long?" she asked herself, though she spoke the words aloud. "How long have they been building all this?" "Based on the quantum dating signatures," Korthovan replied, having overheard her question. "Some of these installations are over 3 centuries old. They've been planning for this moment since before most of our civilizations achieved faster-than-light travel." 3 centuries. The number staggered her. Humanity had been preparing for the Devourer threat since they were supposedly confined to their home planet. using technologies that shouldn't have existed for beings of their apparent development level. It suggested a level of long-term strategic thinking that was almost incomprehensible. The Eternal Vigil was directed to dock at an orbital facility that materialized out of what had appeared to be empty space. As Zexathara and her senior staff were escorted through corridors that rivaled anything the galactic civilizations had produced, she found herself studying the humans they encountered with new eyes. They moved with the confidence of a species that had never doubted their place in the galaxy, spoke with the casual competence of people who had been dealing with interstellar politics for generations. Most unsettling of all, they greeted the alien visitors with genuine warmth, as if the revelation of their true nature was a relief rather than a strategic necessity. The debriefing chamber was a marvel of engineering, a vast spherical room where representatives of every allied civilization could gather, regardless of their environmental needs. Atmospheric zones accommodated species that breathed everything from methane to exotic gases, while gravitational fields were adjusted to match each delegate's biological requirements. Admiral Harrison stood at the center of it all, looking remarkably calm for someone who had just orchestrated the elimination of the galaxy's greatest threat. Around him, holographic displays showed the aftermath of the battle. Devourer ships drifting powerless throughout known space, their biological systems shut down permanently with the death of their controlling intelligence. "Welcome," Harrison said, his voice carrying clearly to every delegate despite the chamber's size. "I know you all have questions and we're prepared to answer them. But first let me express humanity's gratitude for your participation in Operation Mousetrap. Without your fleets, this victory would not have been possible." A synthetic collective representative, its mechanical form gleaming under the chamber's lights, was the first to speak. Query: Tactical analysis indicates human forces alone possessed sufficient capability to eliminate Devourer threat. Allied fleet participation appears to have been unnecessary from strategic perspective. Explanation requested. Harrison nodded, as if he had expected the question. "You're correct that we could have handled the Devourers alone, but that was never the point. This operation wasn't just about eliminating a threat. It was about bringing the galaxy together, showing that cooperation between civilizations can achieve what no single species could manage alone." "But you could manage it alone," Counselor Kethmore interjected, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. "We've just witnessed proof of that. Your technology exceeds our own by centuries, perhaps millennia. Why maintain the deception? Why pretend to be a primitive species?" "Because," Harrison replied, "we learned from the Devourers' mistakes. They saw themselves as superior to every other form of life in the galaxy, believed that their advanced nature gave them the right to consume and dominate. We never wanted to make that same error." He gestured to the displays around them, which now showed images from human history, cities, art, music, literature. "Our strength has never been our technology, though we're quite proud of what we've accomplished. Our strength is our ability to learn from others, to find value in perspectives that differ from our own. Every alliance we've forged, every friendship we've built has made us better than we were before." Zexthera found herself standing before she had consciously decided to speak. "How long have you been watching us? How long have you been manipulating galactic politics from the shadows?" The question drew sharp attention from every delegate in the chamber. It was the concern that lurked beneath all the others. If humanity had been pulling strings behind the scenes, what did that mean for the sovereignty of their civilizations? "We haven't been manipulating anything," Harrison said firmly. "We've been participating. Yes, we've been more involved in galactic affairs than you realize, but always as partners, never as controllers. The trade agreements your civilizations have signed, the mutual defense pacts, the cultural exchanges, all of those were genuine. We simply didn't advertise our true capabilities." "But why?" the Etherian delegate asked, its gaseous form rippling with emotion. "Why hide your advancement? Why not claim your rightful place as the galaxy's dominant civilization?" Harrison's expression softened, and for the first time since Zexathera had met him, she saw something vulnerable in his eyes. "Because we've seen what dominance costs. Early in our history, before we reached the stars, we made the mistake of believing that advancement gave us the right to rule over those we perceived as less developed. The results were catastrophic: wars, genocide, the near destruction of our own civilization." He paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of dozens of species. We swore that we would never make that mistake again. When we finally reached the stars and encountered other civilizations, we made a conscious choice to be partners rather than rulers, to learn from others rather than impose our will upon them. And the Devourers? Zexithara asked.
How long have you known about them?
237 years, Harrison replied. We encountered survivors from one of the worlds they had consumed, refugees hiding in the deep space between star systems. They told us about the threat, showed us evidence of what the Devourers were capable of. That's when we began preparing. The scope of human planning became clearer with each revelation. For over 2 centuries, they had been working toward this single moment, building alliances, developing technologies, positioning themselves to eliminate a threat that most of the galaxy didn't even know existed. So what happens now? Counselor Kethmore asked. The Devourers are gone, but the balance of power in the galaxy has fundamentally shifted. How do we proceed knowing what we now know about humanity's true capabilities? Harrison smiled, and Zexithara realized it was the first genuine smile she had seen from him. Now we do what we've always done, we work together. The Devourers were just one threat among many. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers we haven't even discovered yet. We'll face them the same way we face this one, as allies, as friends, as a community of civilizations that chooses cooperation over conquest. And if we choose not to cooperate? The question came from a draconian representative, its reptilian features set in a challenging expression. What if some civilizations decide that humanity's hidden strength makes them a threat to be eliminated? The chamber fell silent, every delegate waiting for Harrison's response. This was the moment that would define the future of galactic civilization, the test of whether humanity's stated principles would hold when challenged. Harrison's E. 1 year after the Battle of Sol, Commander Zexithara stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Defense Station, watching ships from dozens of civilizations conduct joint training exercises in the space around Earth. The sight still seemed surreal to her fleets that had once operated in isolation now working together with a coordination that would have been impossible before humanity revealed their true nature. Quite a view, isn't it? Admiral Harrison's voice came from behind her, and she turned to see him approaching with 2 cups of what humans called coffee, a stimulant beverage that had become surprisingly popular among the galactic community. I'm still processing it all, Zexithara admitted, accepting the cup with gratitude. The bitter liquid had grown on her over the past year, much like humanity itself. A year ago, my mission was to protect what I thought was a primitive species from annihilation. Now I'm serving as liaison officer in the most advanced military installation the galaxy has ever seen. Harrison joined her at the observation window, watching as a formation of Valdarian ships practiced coordinated maneuvers with human vessels. The integration was seamless, technologies that had developed independently for millennia working together, as if they had been designed for cooperation from the beginning. How are the other civilizations adapting? Harrison asked. I know the revelation about our capabilities caused some political upheaval. Zexithara laughed, remembering the chaos that had engulfed the Galactic Council in the months following the Devourer War. Upheaval is putting it mildly. 3 governments fell when their populations learned that their leaders had been secretly cooperating with humanity for decades. The synthetic collective spent 6 months recalculating their threat assessment matrices. And don't get me started on the philosophical crisis the Etherians went through when they realized they had been outmaneuvered by what they thought was a juvenile species. But they adapted? They had to, she replied. The alternative was admitting that they had been completely wrong about the nature of intelligence and advancement. Most civilizations found it easier to adjust their perspectives than to rebuild their entire understanding of galactic politics. Through the window, they watched as a group of human children from the station's civilian section played in one of the recreation areas. The sight of young humans growing up in an environment where contact with dozens of alien species was normal still amazed Zexithara. These children would grow up in a galaxy where cooperation between civilizations was the norm rather than the exception. What about the Devourer worlds? She asked. The ones they had already consumed? Harrison's expression grew thoughtful. That's been one of our biggest challenges. Terraforming technology can restore the atmospheric composition and basic ecology, but rebuilding the cultures and civilizations that were lost, that's proving more difficult. We've been working with the consciousness fragments we recovered from the hierarchical node, trying to reconstruct what was destroyed. It was a project that captured the imagination of the entire galaxy, the attempt to literally resurrect extinct civilizations using the memories and personalities that the Devourers had absorbed over the millennia. Some attempts had been successful, resulting in the restoration of species that had been considered permanently lost. Others had yielded only fragmentary echoes of what had once existed. Any progress with the Andromedans? Zexthara asked. The civilization that had provided the theoretical framework for consciousness transfer had been the most sought-after target for resurrection, given their advanced understanding of quantum mechanics and dimensional physics. Some, Harrison replied cautiously. We've managed to reconstruct several individuals, and their knowledge has been invaluable for advancing our understanding of multidimensional engineering. But their civilization was so vast and complex that full restoration may take centuries. A soft chime indicated an incoming message, and Harrison activated his communication device. The holographic image that appeared showed Captain Sarah Chen, now commanding one of humanity's most advanced deep space exploration vessels. Admiral, Chen's image said, we've completed our survey of the former Devourer staging areas in the Andromeda Spiral. No signs of remaining biological activity, but we did find something interesting. What kind of interesting? Ruins, sir. Not from the civilizations the Devourers consumed, but from something much older. The quantum dating suggests they're over 1 billion years old, older than any known sapient species in this part of the galaxy. Harrison and Zexthara exchanged glances. The discovery of ancient ruins was always significant, but ruins that predated known galactic civilization by such a margin suggested something extraordinary. Any indication of what civilization might have built them? Harrison asked. That's the strange part, sir. The construction techniques and materials suggest a level of technological advancement that exceeds even our current capabilities. But more importantly, we found message crystals. Message crystals. Information storage devices designed to survive geological timescales. We've only managed to decode fragments so far, but what we found is concerning. The transmission quality flickered as Chen consulted something off-screen. When she returned, her expression was troubled. Sir, the messages appear to be warnings. References to something called the final convergence and entities known as the silence between stars. The builders of these ruins were apparently preparing for some kind of threat that makes the Devourers look like a minor inconvenience. Zexthara felt her breathing apparatus flutter, the same involuntary response she had experienced a year ago when first learning about the Devourer threat. Another galaxy-spanning menace? Unknown at this time, Chen replied. But the ruins include star charts that show patterns of destruction spanning multiple galactic clusters. Whatever the final convergence refers to, it operates on a scale that's almost incomprehensible. After the transmission ended, Harrison and Zexthara stood in contemplative silence. The implications of Chen's discovery would require careful analysis. But already Zexthara could see the wheels turning in Harrison's mind, the same strategic thinking that had enabled humanity to prepare for the Devourer threat centuries in advance. How long do you think we have? She asked. Unknown, Harrison replied. The ruins are 1 billion years old, so whatever cycle they're referring to operates on geological timescales. It could be tomorrow or it could be 1 million years from now, but you're going to prepare anyway. It wasn't a question. Zexthara had learned enough about human nature over the past year to know that they would never ignore a potential threat, no matter how distant or uncertain. Of course, Harrison confirmed. That's what we do. We prepare for threats that others don't even know exist. But this time, we won't be doing it alone. He gestured toward the training exercises visible through the observation window, where ships from across the galaxy continued their coordinated maneuvers. The Devourer War taught us that cooperation is our greatest strength. Whatever the final convergence turns out to be, we'll face it together. Zexthara nodded, feeling a sense of certainty that surprised her. A year ago, she had thought she was protecting a primitive species from annihilation. Now she knew that she was part of something much larger, a galactic community united not by conquest or domination, but by the shared commitment to protect all sentient life. There's something I've been meaning to ask, she said. The name of your flagship during the battle, the Prometheus. What did it mean? Harrison smiled, and she recognized the expression as one he reserved for questions about human culture. Prometheus was a figure from our ancient mythology. He stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, knowing that he would be punished for the act but believing that the benefit to his people was worth the cost. And you see yourselves as Prometheus? In a way, Harrison replied. We've stolen the fire of advanced technology, of strategic planning, of galactic cooperation, and we've shared it freely, knowing that it might change the balance of power but believing that a stronger, more united galaxy is worth any personal cost. As they watched, one of the human children in the recreation area approached the observation window and pressed her small hand against the transparent aluminum. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she looked out at the alien ships conducting their exercises, and Zexathara realized that this child would grow up in a galaxy where such sights were normal. She'll never know the fear we lived with, Zexathara observed, the constant worry about threats emerging from the unknown regions of space. No, Harrison agreed. But she'll face challenges we can't even imagine. The final convergence, whatever it is, will be her generation's responsibility. All we can do is prepare them as best we can and trust that they'll be ready when the time comes. Looking at the child's face, full of curiosity and hope, Zexathara felt a profound sense of confidence in the future. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for threats that no one else even knew existed, had revealed themselves to be the galaxy's secret guardians, and had inspired unprecedented cooperation between civilizations. Whatever the final convergence might bring, whatever ancient threat lurked in the space between stars, she knew that it would face a galaxy that was united, prepared, and guided by a species that had proven their comté